I'm going to show you some things to do with cell formats in Microsoft Excel and specifically to do with time. Microsoft Excel and computers in general record time in a different manner than we're used to. And so what you'll see over here is a series of numbers that look like they're all very slightly different. We can see in the decimals here that they're going up by a small amount each time. And that's because Microsoft Excel records time as the number of days since January 1st, 1900. So what we see here is it's been 41,142.5 days since January 1st, 1900 at midnight. So each of these tiny decimal increments represents a portion of a day or a few minutes. So we can see that most of these values were all taken on the same day. Now, Excel can present that information in a variety of different ways. So what we're going to do is we're going to turn that into an actual date and a time. So I'm just going to select the whole column by clicking up here on A, and then I'm going to right click and click on Format Cells. And you'll see here we've got a number of different types of number formats that we can use. So let's start with the obvious one here, date. So we can pick a variety of different date formats that we want to use, and really it's personal preference. I'm going to select here date, month, and year, and click on OK. And instantly we get a bunch of dates. Now, of course, we can see that these were all taken on the same date. Those small decimal increments represented just a few minutes more each time. So all of these were on the same date. So that wasn't too helpful for us. So if I right-click again and click on Format Cells, and this time click on Time, again, a few different variety of time formats, I'm just going to click on this one right here where we have hour, minute, seconds, and AM or PM, and click on OK. And we can see that what these times actually were, these small decimal increments, were 1 minute increments from 12 to 12:01 to 12:02 to 12:03. And so all of a sudden that tells me exactly what time of day that these data points were recorded. And if you're making a graph, that can be really useful because all of a sudden I can suddenly tell just by looking at your graph why something might have happened. If there was a sudden change in the light intensity between 12 and 1 p.m., I might think that that's because someone left the classroom and turned the lights off at lunchtime without having to have someone potentially explain that to me. And so that becomes a very powerful tool in using your data to convince someone of something. Now, of course, if this had been over a much longer period of time, say 3 or 4 days, we might have 12 p.m. occurring several times. And so we might want both time and date. So again, I'm going to right click here and click on Format Cells. And you'll see we don't have one that combines date and time. So we're actually going to go down to Custom. And you'll see there's all kinds of weird symbols and different formats. But you're going to see one here, date, month, year, hour, and minute. So if I click on that, what that's going to do is show us the date, the month, the year, the hour, and the minute. And this format actually becomes very easy to manipulate. DD stands for date in two numbers. So it's going to, if it's the 28th, it's going to show 28. If it's the 7th, it's going to show 07. Again, month and year, and hour and minute. And so if we want to add seconds on here, we're just going to put a colon and seconds. If I want to make hour 2 digits, so for example, if it's 4 in the morning, it's going to show 04, then I can just put HH. If, for example, I wanted to put months before days, just put MM, DD. So now if I click OK, you're going to see we have the month, date, year, and time all in one column. And again, that's something that's going to be really helpful for looking at on a graph. Now you'll see over here I have a series of times, and this might be something that you will get out of a data logger that logs every 60 seconds, for example, but it doesn't actually know what time it is. So while that's useful in putting on a graph in some ways, again, it could be really helpful if we could actually look at this as an actual time of day. So let's say I knew that I plugged this data logger in at 12 noon on a given day. So what I'm going to do is try and convert these times and seconds into actual times of day. So this first one would be 12 noon. The second one, 60 seconds later, would be 12:01. The third one, 120 seconds later, would be 12:02. Now, as I mentioned, Excel records time as a a whole number representing the days since January 1st, 2012. So that means if we need to look at incrementing time, we need to divide the number of seconds by the number of seconds in a day, so that each of these time gaps represents a fraction of a day. So we're going to start up here by clicking on typing in the time that we started. So let's say we started at 12 noon. And if I was just to simply add 60 to 12 noon, I'd get 12 noon again. And that's because what it actually did was add 60 days. So again, we need to add 60 seconds. So we're going to do, instead of adding just 60, we're going to do 60 divided by the number of seconds in a day, which happens to be 86,400. Now, if you didn't know that, we could easily put that in there by saying 24 hours in a day times 60 minutes in an hour times 60 seconds in a minute. And we just hit enter. And that's going to give us 12:01. Now again, we've learned before that we can copy and paste this. So I'm going to just select this and drag it all the way down to the bottom, and it's going to pre-populate all the numbers. But you're going to notice something strange happen. We went from 12 to 12:01 to 12:03 to 12:06, and these should be going in 1 minute gaps. And the reason is because of relative and absolute cell references, which you should have learned about earlier. So you'll notice that what's happening, if I click here, we can see that we're adding 60 seconds to 12 o'clock. If I go down to the cell below, you'll notice that we're adding 120 seconds or 2 minutes to 12:01, whereas we should be adding 120 seconds to 12 o'clock. So we've got two ways of solving this. The first way is, if I click here, we could just add the difference. So instead of just adding the 60, we're going to do 60 minus 0, which of course is still 60, so we're going to get the same answer. But if we copy and paste that down, you'll notice we get the correct answer. And that's because if we look here, we're now adding 120 minus 60, which is still 60, and so adding 1 more minute to 12:01, giving us 12:02. The other way of doing it, so if I undo that, would be to use absolute cell references. So that means always adding the number here to this top number here. So we're going to click on F2, and as we learned before, putting in the dollar signs or just hitting F4 to make that an absolute cell reference. Now when I drag this down, once again I'm going to get the correct answers, because if we look at each cell, we can see that it's adding 120 seconds or 2 minutes to 12. Again, below that, we're adding 180 seconds or 3 minutes to 12 o'clock. And so that way we can turn numbers that are in seconds to actual times, which are much more meaningful to your audience. So we can use this format cell feature to convert numbers quite easily. For example, we can also click on that whole column, click on format cells, and you'll see we can quickly change the number of decimal points. Or we could turn that into a currency. Or we could turn it into a percentage. So it's a way to quickly format numbers within Excel to put them in a format that's much more meaningful to your audience.